and welcome back to Shine Total Wellness. Today, we are talking about brain fog after having children, otherwise known as mom brain. Is it a thing, and where does it come from? So, if you have kids, you're probably like, yeah, it's definitely a thing, but you probably don't know why. And so brain fog has so many different causes. We're not going to talk about all of the causes of brain fog, but specifically brain fog in the postpartum era. That's what we're going to be diving into today. So you might be familiar with the term mom brain yourself. It's usually what we think of when we're having trouble finding a word. We feel like we're moving through jello, trying to form a sentence. We're less able to focus and concentrate, and we have less mental clarity in general. And while mom brain is not a medical term or a medical diagnosis, there are a lot of factors that are all happening postpartum that can contribute to feeling like this. One of the most significant factors in mom brain is that the gray matter actually shrinks in our brains during pregnancy. So that is pretty wild. The gray matter is the region of our brain that's actually responsible for processing and responding to social signals. So, I mean, it makes sense that women might feel a little slower, a little more confused in situations like going back to work, things like play group, even like making small talk at the grocery store. It just feels a little more difficult and less natural than it used to. And while it may sound kind of scary to have shrinking gray matter in your brain during pregnancy, there's actually a good reason why it happens. So, neurologists believe that the shrinking gray matter actually creates more room for you to respond to urgent situations and threats, which you're probably going to need with a new baby. And it helps you develop more of those maternal instincts and better tend to your baby's needs. So there is a reason behind it. Our brains actually do grow in a lot of ways when we're pregnant and in that postpartum period. But that's not a way that's necessarily going to help with the brain fog. In addition to that shrinking gray matter, women experience the most dramatic hormone shift of human life immediately after birth. And during pregnancy, our progesterone and estrogen levels increase far beyond what they were prior to getting pregnant. That shift in and of itself can lead to some changes in your mental state, especially increased fatigue, thanks to all of that progesterone. But the more pronounced shift happens after birth. And that's when your estrogen and progesterone absolutely nosedive, right? And that happens really, really quickly. So there are some cognitive repercussions. It affects the brain in a couple different ways. Worsened memory and cognition is one of those ways, as well as reduced mitochondrial function. So that's that cellular energy. And that means you might have less of that mental energy and quickness that you're used to. And it can also lead to poorer mood. So the good news here is that our hormones do start to rebound around the time that we get our first postpartum period. But if you're breastfeeding, I mean, that can take up to a year or more that you're essentially in a menopausal hormonal state. Everything is really quiet. And you might be feeling the effects of that, not only in your brain, but elsewhere in your body and your life. When we're talking about mom brain, we can't not talk about the huge increase in stress and anxiety after having a baby. Whether it's your first baby or your fourth baby, a new addition to the family, I mean, it just brings more stress. Even if a lot of that is hopefully positive stress, the stress hormones can still impact your brain. So we know that cortisol and adrenaline have a lot of known negative side effects in our brains, and especially prolonged or chronic stress can result in worse memory, decreased cognitive function, brain atrophy, and even a reduced resilience to future stressors. And what's more than that, it's really difficult to learn or retain new information when we're under stress. The sleep deprivation that new moms are inevitably going to experience postpartum just adds a whole other layer to that cognitive kind of whirlwind that's happening postpartum. So, healthy women need 8 to 9 hours of quality sleep per night to feel their best. So, I can't really remember the last time I got that much sleep, and you might not be able to either. We know that it's super normal for newborns to wake up every 2 to 3 hours because they need to feed, right? But it's not necessarily the way that we are designed to function. And really, moms are usually taking the brunt of that sleep deprivation, especially if you're a breastfeeding or a pumping mom. Unfortunately, though, a bad night's sleep starts negatively impacting your brain as soon as the very next day. And chronic lack of sleep really only worsens it. So, some side effects of poor sleep include a shorter attention span, a reduction in learning and processing ability, feeling mentally slow and confused, and even having increased negative emotional processing. And that means that on top of feeling foggy and incapable of concentrating, you might also feel more irritable, more emotionally volatile, anxious, all sorts of things that you probably don't want to be feeling. And you might already be feeling a little bit of just being postpartum. And the last point I want to touch on when it comes to brain fog postpartum is the massive amount of multitasking that we're doing on a daily basis. This isn't just a recently postpartum mama. I mean, people with older kids, it doesn't stop. So not only are we in charge of our own schedules, we also have the needs and the schedules of the entire household to consider. So, all of those doctor's appointments, that running grocery list in your head, oh my gosh, we're out of diapers and wipes, and I need to get clothes in the next size up, and the baby's growing out of her shoes. I could go on and on. You don't need me to, because if you're a mom, you've got that same thing going on in your head 24/7. And while it's stuff that we need to do, that mental clutter can really make our brains feel disorganized. And it's also known that constantly switching between those tabs in our brain actually makes us less efficient and less focused, even when we're not multitasking. So by this point, two things are crystal clear. Mom brain is a real thing, and there is science behind it. And moms are pretty much superheroes for being able to stay on top of everything that we do every single day of our lives. That immediate postpartum brain fog does normally improve because your hormones are going to eventually rebalance. The sleep is eventually going to get better. But becoming a mother truly changes our brains and impacts our cognitive function, sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worse. I mean, you can probably do more in a 20-minute crap nap now than you could have done in 3 hours before having a kid. But at the same time, that doesn't mean you're not struggling to focus and keep everything together. So I hope this video gave some validation to the brain fog that you might be feeling postpartum or just as a busy mom. If you're struggling, you should seek help. If the brain fog is negatively impacting your daily life, that's not normal and not something that you should live with. Talk to your doctor, consider postpartum health coaching because there is support available for you. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you liked this, please give me a thumbs up. You can click the subscribe button below, and I would love to hear about your experience with postpartum brain fog in the comments. Talk to you next time.